where we've gotten repeated shocks to our economy from external international influences. Well, now there are signs that that is perhaps being alleviated, slowly receding. The president of the Supermarkets Association was on AM Prime a couple days ago, and he indicated as much. And looking into the matter internationally, you do see signs that food prices are, well, they are dropping. 11 straight months of food prices dropping. The problem is, while that may be true, what we experience in groceries, not just here but abroad, doesn't necessarily see food prices return to, say, the post-pandemic period, at least not with regards to certain prices, because one could say food prices are dropping, but I believe that's just the average based on looking at all food prices. Certain items have not necessarily moved. The drop in price, I believe, has been attributed to vegetable oils and perhaps grain, but things like meat has not really moved. Now, the world has an interesting conundrum, and I'll then tie that back to why that matters to us in a second. Right now, food insecurity is ironically even higher than, I believe, 2019. We're talking about 340-something million people, give or take, that are at risk of food insecurity. That is to say, they are at risk of eventually starving and starving to death. Right now, one of the main driving factors for that is conflicts, not just the war in Ukraine, but there are other conflicts going on in Africa, and even the aftermath of certain situations, like with regards to Afghanistan. As much as that situation, one could say it's stable, it's not necessarily come out with that nation being in a healthy economic position, among other things. Now, in the UK and in the US, currently, they are still dealing with high food prices. In the US, inflation has tapered off. In the UK, they have now had to resort to rationing. I believe vegetable scarcity is a big deal over there. In Canada last week, their agricultural parliamentary committee actually had 3 of the CEOs of 3 of the largest domestic grocery chains in to answer with regards to food prices. Why are they so high? What was revealed is that at the end of the day, their profits are high, yes, for the period, and I think we could even look locally, and some people have asked that question, having discussions with them. But the profits from food is not necessarily out of proportion with normal times. To what extent are groceries now taking advantage? Because again, 11 straight months of food prices dropping. The oil and gas, as that drops, distribution costs, shipping costs, as a lot of those things drop, cost of food should be dropping. The UN is looking to try to keep the grain deal with Russia as the war continues, but to keep the grain moving from that part that is right now locked in bitter conflict. The UN is trying to keep that deal alive to ensure that we no longer have any more negative effects to our food supply. But as a food insecure nation, this is something that we have to keep track of, because larger, more robust, more wealthy economies are not exempt to these things. So Canada's grocer said, we only get $1 for every $25 in revenue as profit off of groceries. We get profit off of other items, non-food related. Okay, fine. But to what extent the journalists and politicians in Canada are still asking, to what extent, though, is your record profits enough, or perhaps too much, when the price of food on the shelves in your grocery is still considered by the average citizen of that nation to be too high? What can we learn here in TNT? Perhaps we need our parliamentarians now to ask some pointed questions to the local grocery chains with regards to the price of food. Why is it the way it is? Justify it to us. It's not necessarily to say that it can't be justified. But again, on Talking Point, we ask the government to be transparent would it hurt for major supermarkets and grocery chains to also be transparent with regards to their costs? Because it's not as though they're recording record losses or even minor losses. Sure, on some items, the Canadian grocers said on basic necessities they were losing money, which very well could be true, not just there, but down here, depending. Businesses have loss leaders all the time. But I think this is something that we need to look into, and we need a bit more information for to ensure, well, why are prices the way they are? Because food retailers, that is to say, food outlets where you get takeaway dining, etc., well, historically, at least in TNT, I can't necessarily speak for the rest of the world, but they don't drop their prices. As a box of fried chicken costs a lot more now than what it used to a few years ago, will it somehow go down? I don't know. What we do know is that locals in TNT, over the Christmas period, I think we got the first indicator that enough was enough, and there's a limit to how much money they wanted to spend as prices keeps rising, to say, no more rises, please, because I'm not buying this food item anymore. But to what extent can we see prices go back down? Because it's a heavy burden on the economy, and it's also a heavy burden on the government. One of the things that has been pointed out that the UN is afraid of is that as other economic considerations come into play, governments have less and less money. Governments in the third world have less and less money to subsidize food. So there are signs of food prices going down if you look at the UN's situation. But I think the reductions are tapering off, and, well, we're not out of the woods. I think usually around this time we get out of the woods, we go back to business as usual. That's what happened back in the 70s and 80s when we had the austerity measures. And things went right back to usual, and we kind of forgot about how to be responsible with our money. And now, a couple decades later, look at where we are. So it's something we'll keep an eye on. But moving on, an interesting story caught my attention. And that is the Ministry of Works and Transports. Well, they took note of a situation where some people unaffiliated with the government, they were looking to fix the road themselves. Because my co-host says this all the time. And to some extent it is very true based on my own experiences just driving around Port of Spain. A hole will exist. And it will be there for a long time. They may or may not have a leak. So there will be a puddle of water that will continue to erode that hole. It might become a hazard to your vehicle. If you're not careful, you might actually not just go into the hole, but damage your vehicle. Then it's patched up. The patch might not be a good patch. But then WASA might come and dig out the hole to finally fix the leak. Allegedly, the people who fixed it the first time were waiting on WASA. That's the stereotypical story that I'm sure many of you have heard. But sometimes it's just the road is mashed up. And it seems as though nobody is having any sort of urgency in order to fix it. Now, the former Faizabad Chamber of Commerce President, Clint June, he led a group of residents to repair a 2.25-mile strip of roadway from the highway to Silver Stream because it was important for the businesses that relied on that road for their customers to come to those businesses. So here comes a private citizen saying, I'm going to fix it. Now, the minister says, look, we have no problem. We're willing to partner with groups and entities that want to assist in road rehabilitation. But he said there's a way to go about that, right? It has to be based on the guidelines and the supervision of the Works and Transport Ministry. And I understand that. I get that. Because at the end of the day, you can't just leave it to any Tom, Dick, and Harry to do road repair in any random way, because there might be consequences if the work was not up to snuff. So I get it. It's important that these things be done properly so that it's safe and secure. The problem is we've went through a period where it seemed as though there was no road repair being done, period. And it wasn't too long ago, I think, when the Minister of Public Utilities had to now chastise WASA and how the management of its road repair services with regards to when they fix leaks and dig up the road, etc., etc. There was miscommunications there, I believe, that he said. But this has been a situation going longer than that. So while I understand the minister's stance, I'm not sure if it's enough to alleviate the frustration. Not just of these residents. There are many roads throughout the country that are in desperate need of repair. From what I understand, the situation in Mayaro after the flooding has not come anywhere near close to being finalized with regards to its repair. Some work has been done, but it is incomplete, to say the least. I could be wrong about that. Somebody could call and correct me. And I'll always talk about when a group of us went to Moruga. The roads might have well have been dirt tracks with stones randomly sticking out at odd angles because it didn't seem like asphalt really for much of that roadway once you get down that far south. It wasn't like one stretch here or one stretch there, it's multiple stretches. So these residents are frustrated, they're going to do it themselves. The question is, what happens now? You say there's a process. What happens now when the frustration reaches the point where the process is taking too long? Because it's not as though the government has a reputation, and by government I don't mean the PRM, by government I mean the whole system, bureaucracy of the public service. It's not as though they have a reputation of expediency and efficiency. Granted, things that need to be fast-tracked sometimes can get fast-tracked. Pharmacy licenses and home licenses not included in those things. But there are times when things can be fast-tracked, which then begs the question, not everything has a process that legitimately will take days or weeks or months. It just needs a few signatures and approvals. What's going on with regards to this situation here? Is that the Works and Transport Ministry doesn't have the money to fix your roadway? And in which case, I kind of understand as well, the minister is happy to partner with anybody willing to do the work for him. The backlog is probably so overwhelming, and I am not even confident that he has enough financial resources to treat with all of the roadworks that needs to be treated with. Because that's where we've reached. It's not as though we have like one area or two areas need to be treated with, and then the rest is some minor stuff that need maintenance work. No. We have a lot of our road infrastructure that needs significant repairs, including the capital city. So it's not as though ministers are completely unaware of what's going on. One minister has a new high-rise development on a road that has its fair share of some sketchy potholes right around the corner from the studio. I take that road home all the time. It goes to the savannah. This is not some out-of-the-way road that only one person uses every other week. So some important things are on this road with regards to our diplomatic situation, and I'll leave it at that. So, Mr. Minister, I understand, but the people are frustrated. Now, if you could work to ensure that the process to get approval and supervision will not hold back anybody that wants to repair their own road, then by all means. But please, don't now add to the problem. As much as I understand that it's important that proper standards be kept, a little more urgency in these matters would be appreciated. Last story, we have to take a break, so I'll just mention it, of course, as always. Not enough time. The University of Western Needs, at least locally, has reported a decline in enrollment. That has some budgetary concerns with regards to the university, with regards to meeting its costs. Now, UE did say that they weren't able to raise their tuition fees, and I believe we as a country should be grateful for that. But it does now beg the question, beyond UE's financial survival, which I don't think is in jeopardy just yet, by the way. But one of the things we do have to ask now is, to what extent should we as a nation be concerned that our tertiary education system is perhaps seeing drops in enrollment as the GATE program is no longer available? To what extent do we need the GATE program, and should we be pushing the GATE program? To what extent can we not afford it? And what would we do now? What can we do to potentially replace or figure out a new and different solution to ensure that as much of our population be granted the opportunities to improve themselves and improve their skills to better their economic situation? We already have questions with regards to the education system, in my opinion, and the impact it has on the reduction of opportunities for some of our young people that will then make them more susceptible to enter into a life of crime. If it is that more and more people, as our economy comes under more difficulty, are having a hard time potentially accessing tertiary education at a time when gone are the days where O-levels is enough to get you a job in a corporation in the country. The standard, so we have to now perhaps look at this before the problem gets worse. It's a small problem now. It's a tiny problem now, perhaps. But we need to look at it before it gets worse and before more and more of our young people get disenfranchised, because we already know that the criminal justice system can't keep the floodgates closed with the rising tide of crime. Folks, let's take a break. When I come back, I'll be joined by our good lady of Talking Point, and we will get into the big political topic of the day. It's very unfortunate it has become a political bacchanal, and Mrs. Teixeira will be giving her insight with regards to why she thinks this is even happening. And we'll have a debate on that. Folks, this is Talking Point. We'll be right back.
We discuss gestational diabetes, a form of diabetes which develops in pregnant women. This medical condition can affect both the fetus and mother, but can be managed to ensure that you have a healthy pregnancy and a healthy baby.
From the first trimester, there's an increased risk of miscarriages, an increased risk of fetal abnormalities. So these are congenital. The baby could be born with an abnormality.
What's up, Doc? Every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion.
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Talking Point, and of course I'm joined by the good lady of Talking Point. She has been with us from just about the beginning of the show's existence. Folks, I am speaking of former Minister of Finance and legal scholar professor. She's taught most of the legal talking heads, you could say, in the country. That is Mrs. Karen Eunice. Good morning, Karen.
Good morning to you, Sean. I understand Keaton isn't with us as yet. Hopefully you'll join us. So as usual, I'm very pleased to be with WSN on a morning on Talking Point. Just to say, yes, you're right. I've taught nearly all of the talk heads, including Roger Gaspard. But I want to say that I started teaching at the law school, just to put my age in some context. I just turned 30. So many of my students, like Roger Gaspard, and a lot of them were very close to my age at the time. I just want to put that in there for my own sake. And just one last one before we go to the topic of what we would like to speak about is I did hear you talk about at the very tail end about the issue of road repairs. I just wanted to say you made a point that yes, talking about going forward, did it have to reach to this point? And one of the things that has been stated or exposed actually by people who worked. He was the former mayor of Point Fortin, and he got Larry Achong, worked in the oil industry. He's from Point Fortin. He said that when they closed on Petrotrin, supplied the bitumen. It was a high quality bitumen, and that bitumen was mixed with the Lakes asphalt to do our road repairs, to build our roads and so on. It was a high quality. When they closed on Petrotrin, the source of bitumen was no longer from Petrotrin, and from what he explained is that the source that they got the bitumen was of a lower quality and could not stand up to wear and tear on the roads for more than a short period of time. So part of the problem, but now I understand they are getting the bitumen from another source. So just putting that into the equation, that also contributed to the breakdown of our road system.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I don't know how much the pandemic would have also gotten into the way of getting solutions to that particular problem. Let's assume it to be true. I would say though that I would still like to see more both agency and or innovation. I know in New York they recycle road asphalt, in some cases up to 100%. Now, that's not to say that it is easily applicable. We have a different environment here. However, I will say this. It might be that they, were working a lot behind the scenes to solve this situation, but it's taken so long and we don't know about the work that they've done because they don't like to reveal things as much as possible. So can the population be blamed for feeling frustrated? However, hopefully, based on what you said, it means that there is a good solution that should be coming and we won't necessarily have to deal with this on our ongoing basis, because that's what it's feel like for the last 3 years, ongoing. As soon as the road is fixed, it needs to be fixed again, and it takes so long to be fixed. It's almost as though it's unfixed for longer than it's fixed. But moving on, one of the big stories, of course, over the last week, what I guess you could say it started small, and then it grew because crime is a big issue. So, of course, the prosecution of crime is a concerning issue, and the DPP has been basically saying, well, look, at the end of the day, I don't have enough staff, I don't have enough prosecutors in order to meet the demands of criminal trials. And it became a big political brouhaha as various parties became involved and gave their comment, some of which was very pointed at the DPP. In some cases, you could say looking to throw him under the bus and put all the responsibility on him. When it didn't make sense to Keaton and I, because no one could refute the fact that if the DPP can't hire his staff, how is he responsible for staffing levels? Karen, you delve even deeper into this.
I just want to say, ironically, because, I always try to do my best preparation as I can. So, of course, I will look at the law. I will look at the relevant websites of the government that gives you information. And, of course, I will look at newspaper reports and, from responsible sources, and then hopefully put it together. So what was the most ironic thing that I found out is that the statement that the criminal system is on the verge of collapsing was first made by the Chief Justice himself at the opening of the law term in 2020, 2021. He is the one that made that statement originally. And what I will say, to get straight to what I consider to be the point, but then to break it down, is that I am of the view, considered a view, given the information and the, how things have just cohered, that there's an effort to get Roger Gaspard out of office, this DPP. There's, in my view, a concerted effort. And why do I start first with the Chief Justice, who, as we know, there was an effort, a very determined effort by the Law Association, going all the way to the Privy Council, determined effort to have him removed, which we are not going to go into. He was not, but there was no question that they wanted him to remove. Many attorneys, including Law Association, which is the member, that is the official representative of the attorneys at law. And Section 137, the only person that could remove the Chief Justice is the Prime Minister. First, by setting up a tribunal under Section 137. And so I have no doubt in my mind at the UNC, and they said it, had they come into office, they would have set up the tribunal. The Prime Minister did not do that. Not only did he not set up the tribunal, but judges, increase the number of judges, and also increase the number of years from 65 to 70. So a lot of good things have happened to the judiciary, increasing their judicial capacity, which is a good thing, increasing the number of years, and a Chief Justice who's still there. And I think we can't help but or recognize that. So having said that, he did not only say in October 2020, he went right after the DPP. He said that the part why the system is crumbling, he's saying because no indictments are being filed, that only 12 indictments were filed, and therefore they are indictments which is going to the assizes for serious crime, which is what we're dealing with in that particular year. And he put all the blame at the foot of the DPP. He also said that the DPP then had to respond to that, and said one of the problems that they have had is that there was a gentleman's agreement. I'm quoting what the DPP said, not what Karen Chair is saying. There was a gentleman's agreement between himself and the Chief Justice, because he had 450 indictments to file, that to scan it, which is going the electronic way, with the shortage of staff, acute shortage of staff, that we would agree to accept the hard copy versions of the indictments. He did not. That ended up in the newspapers, and the Chief Justice blaming the DPP, which is why he had to come out and defend himself and say that the promise was not kept or the agreement was not honored. And now you're coming here to blame me in the public domain at the opening of the law term to say that's why. And at the same time saying that you have a boasting about a number which he said could not be possible based on the maths in it. So it started from then. Again, now we had more recently, we've had the Chief Justice again coming out and saying that a number of cases in the courts, which, by the way, the DPP, which I will then go into his role and function, are not being heard on they can't go ahead with them because there are no prosecutors. Now, the only person responsible for criminal proceedings and criminal prosecution in this country is the office of the DPP, whether it's the Magistrates Court, wherever it may be, in Mayaro, Point Fortin, Port of Spain, wherever it may be, and the criminal proceeding, the High Court, the Assizes, Court of Appeal. It's only the office of the DPP. So should I say to him that the reason why there are no prosecutors in many of the courts, this Attorney General in 2022, when he was now made, soon after he was made Attorney General, admitted, stated in August 2022, when he gave the Attorney General's office, DPP, 20 new lawyers, says the office has been understaffed, and also you can't have, and the additional thing is you can't have one lawyer doing two jobs. He went into the detail about it was unreasonable to expect the DPP office to be able to function with understaffing. Now, this brings me now to the DPPs or the DPP. That was an office created by our 1976 Constitution. Prior to that, the criminal matters were handled by the Attorney General. And the reason why it was that it was constitutionally created, and if you go to the website, it even explains it. It is to give the DPP independence. He's independent from political intervention or stakeholder intervention. It is insulated constitutionally. And so when they created that office, it's removed it from the Attorney General because the Attorney General is a member of cabinet. He's a member of the political party. He's a member of the government. But he's also supposed to give advice to the country and so on. But the point was that it was not a good thing for an Attorney General to be handling criminal matters when it may involve members of his own cabinet be the subject of criminal prosecution. So that was the reason, and that was made there in Section 90 of our 1976 Constitution. Yet you have the ridiculousness, which is why I say it's concerted. You've created the office, you've said why you have created the office, and yet you are criticizing him, one, for not filing indictments. He says, you agree to take it a hard copy because we just don't have the staff. You agree to it, yet you go in a law term and criticize me for not filing indictments. That is your Chief Justice. Guess who's responsible for hiring the staff in the DPP's office, as well as Chief State and all the civil departments of the Attorney General? But the DPPs who we are speaking of, it is the Judicial Legal Service Commission. That is Section 110 of our Constitution. Guess who's the chairman of that Constitution? The Chief Justice. So you, the Chief Justice, I mean, how wrong can you go? You go out publicly, chastise him for not having prosecutors in the court when your commission set up, of which you are the chair by virtue of the Constitution, and you are the one to give him the staff. On top of that, if you go to that same 110, which is why I'm saying it's a concerted effort in my view, the powers of the Judicial Legal Service Commission is to appoint, discipline, transfer, and promote. But that same section says no one can be appointed to any of these offices, including the DPP's office, unless without the consent of the Prime Minister. That same section, 111.3, says that if the Prime Minister objects to an appointment, it cannot be made. So you see the correlation between the Prime Minister, Judicial Legal Service Commission, the Chief Justice, and people sitting on remand for 6, 5, 7 years because they cannot get a day in court because there are not enough prosecutors, and we have a runaway crime situation. And you have a Chief Justice openly criticizing the DPP, who is constitutionally protected. And the only way you can get rid of him, you have to remove him. You can't remove him. He's protected. That you go on a law term and say things that obviously, you know what the words that the DPP used? He said his statements were disingenuous. Disingenuous is a very strong term to use, describing, and the DPP and the Chief Justice continue with that same argument, again, arguing about the crime rate, and again putting all the blame, or most of the blame, or a lot of the blame, for the DPP, knowing very well that he doesn't hire the staff. Now, under-resourcing. The AG, when he was appointed in August 2020, admitted that he's under-resourced. He said that was part of his problem. He has understaffed. He said it. So that is when he gave him 20 new staff that he would have to train up because they wouldn't be experienced and so on. And he admitted it then. Yet this same Attorney General now has almost like a chorus line. You have the Chief Justice just the other day saying they're not enough prosecutors, yet you are responsible for appointing them. You have the Prime Minister coming out in a very vulgar way, which the newspaper opinions have criticized him, instead of dealing with the issue of appointments, understaffing. So let's go to the understaffing. the GPP has been asking for staff year after year after year. He's not pulling a number out of a magic hat. He's asking for the complement of attorneys, which should be given to the criminal department, especially with this runaway crime. It should even be more. In fact, he pointed to a cabinet note in 24 under the former government that recommended increasing the number of attorneys in the DPP office from 129 to 137. Up to the other day, before, there were only 58 prosecutors. In the papers today, you would read that the Attorney General has been said to have given him 10 more. And you have the DPP saying, I've gotten 10 more. Well, they didn't report to me, so I don't know where they are. But maybe it's in tree. Maybe it's in tree. But the point is, I went back because I had made notes years ago. 2017, he said, I'm 57% understaffed. I cannot continue to do my job without a full complement of our attorneys. In February 2018, he said, I've been saying this for years, begging for staff. So it's not something new, not something they don't know, but for reasons best known to themselves and to the Judicial Legal Service Commission and the Prime Minister, who has to consent or not consent to the appointment, they have not given him the staff, which he has been asking for a while. At the same time, the civil law departments, certainly a few years ago, either they had a full complement of staff or as near to close as one would want. And yet the only department responsible under our constitution for criminal matters, the office of the DPP, has been severely understaffed. He has been begging for staff. It's in 2017 he said it. And in 2018 he said it's 8 years now. So he went back to 2009. It was the first time he asked to be given staff, additional staff. And today we are reading now from the AG, understaffing is not the problem. But I find, let me ask the Attorney General, who understood it a few months ago, before they all seem to have conspired or come together on this issue. If they take away half of his civil law staff, his different departments, Chief State, Solicitor General, the drafting department, and take away half of them and the most experienced one, I wonder if he could still perform, his department will perform as well. I wonder if that will, or if he will be affected by that. But he knows that is true.
I also want to say this with regards to the AG. I don't understand how he can make that statement, because he said there was no political benefits in the government under-resourcing the DPP. And I think he does not realize exactly how right he is, because the situation does look that bad politically, because you cannot question the fact, this is what I don't understand, though, why he made the statement. The statement is right, but why are you making it? Can you say that the DPP's office is not under-resourced? It is. So what does that statement actually have to do to say that the blame is on the DPP? You can't deny the fact that it's under-resourced. And back to your point, not only has the AG in the past acknowledged the fact that the DPP's office is under-resourced, but what I also don't understand is the Judicial Services Commission, I believe in February, just last month, they promoted or they took some of the prosecutors to be judges. And that therein, it compounded the problem. Now, it wasn't necessarily, 20 prosecutors were made judges all at once. But it seems to be, after speaking with some people that worked in that office over the last 11 years or so, it seems to be a trend. They will hire a batch of new lawyers that all have to be trained en masse all at once. And then as they leave or get promoted or whatever, the point is they're not available to be prosecutors anymore, they're not replaced. They're not replaced, and then this becomes a bigger issue. So then they get another batch and always the batch is not capable of meeting the needs immediately, because again, they have to be trained. So it seems as though the AG was aware of the problem, as you said. But what I don't understand is, in some of these statements, and I guess you could say this is where they're deflecting and trying to muddy the waters. With some of these statements, they're not really even doing a good job to explain themselves properly, because what they're saying does not actually point any of the blame towards the DPP. It just compounds the blame that should be pointed back at them.
Well, Sean and your listeners, fortunately or unfortunately, having been in government and then being in politics, my view of things always will be, and I think Mr. Panley, when he was Prime Minister, or even if not, he had used his statement connect the dots. So I have connected the dots. In my view, it is too coincidental that the key players in giving the DPP the resources, and one way to frustrate an office is under-resource it. And that is the question. Do that. Let's go to the Attorney General and take away half his staff, and not the young ones, the more experienced ones. And let me see how well. And I thought it was really a lot of temerity on his part for him to say that in the first instance, because there was a case with Central Bank where he was retained by the government to represent them in a wrongful dismissal case that was brought by the person who had been the general manager of the Deposit Insurance Corp, the IC of the Central Bank. And the reason the matter was they had to come to settlement was because he failed as senior counsel, as a lawyer representing the government, to file witness statements within the time frame, and therefore so that he himself, did he underperform? And he shouldn't be so quick to be critical when he himself seemed not to cause a case to collapse or cause a settlement by his failure. Let me do his job. And secondly,
okay,
he might have a problem with getting persons to have confidence in him when you go to the Miami Court of Appeal with the same thing that seems to have started this whole ball rolling again, PR corruption case, and to say that the Court of Appeal in Miami has said that he cannot represent the government because in his statement, where the statement of truth, where you swear the statement of truth, he misled the court. So, it gives a lot of, it's very difficult to hear him. But what I wanted to say, what I don't want to lose from my point of view, I think, is this. I am a big definite opinion that this Chief Justice, who's gotten a lot of staff, who got more judges, who got more years, who didn't get any tribunal against him, who's responsible for hiring the prosecutors for the DPP's office as well as the other offices, and his statements, the Chief Justice, and his role as chairman of the Judicial Legal Service Commission, in his statements in the opening of court, which he seems to be going after the DPP, blaming him for the crimes on the criminal system on the verge of collapse. The Prime Minister, instead of addressing that, going after the opposition member, there was an article on that. And now the Attorney General joining in unison with the three of them and saying understaffing is not any good reason why you're not doing better. Doing better. All of this on the heels of the three senior attorneys leaving out of frustration. They said, I'm sure why wouldn't they take up a judgeship when they're overworked, under-resourced, underpaid, and they have moved on as they are right to move on. And you are doing as though you didn't know this problem exists. He's been begging you for staff, and he's not asking for something. And there's a crime rate that's going sky high, and you are not giving him the stuff. And three of you, Prime Minister, the Chief Justice in his two capacities, and the Attorney General, all three, in unison, seem now to be attacking one person, Roger Gaspard.
Well, we have to take a break. I want to pick up the conversation when we come back, more or less where you left off. But I will say this. This might actually sound very, very familiar to a lot of people who might have worked in the public service. First of all, under-resourcing an office, I think, is just an age-old trick of how to frustrate and hamper and hamstring the officials that hold that office. And, it's not necessarily anything new to hear in the public service about how frustrating it is for people to be there. And I just like to point out, if we allow it to exist in small instances, an office that is not that important here, they do some paperwork here and there, but overall it's not that big of a deal. Look how far it could reach. Look how far it could reach with our prosecutors. So we allow it to work in small instances, it will affect the big ones too. But I want to get back with regards to, after the break, with regards to how it is that everybody seems to be piling on to the DPP when he doesn't even have...
issue that was raised was why he won't move to the new building.
Right, exactly. But there's a lot to unpack here, folks. We have to take a break. When we come back, we're going to get more Intercurrent's take on this issue. And again, this is just one more very important issue that hopefully will not just fall by the wayside. Stay tuned to Talking Point on WSN.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order or visit us in-store at Forces flagship MacBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on it.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Welcome back to Talking Point, folks, here on WESN, the only station in the nation broadcasting on HD. Always remember that. That's why we look the best. Other stations, they might be streaming at a high data rate. For the younger ones might understand that. They could explain it to you. But the image quality, it's not the same, folks. It's not the same. And speaking about quality, we're coming back to this topic here. I am now again questioning. It seems as though this administration, with regards to the Office of the Attorney General, is a bit snake bit because it's questionable quality of the AGs that we've had over the last 7 years or so. The AG is one of the major figures who are pointing the blame for the lack of the prosecution, just overall, that part of the criminal justice system, the breakdown there. They're pointing the blame at the DPP, Roger Gaspard. I myself, just to weigh in with regards to the AG, Karen did earlier, I would like to say, I don't know if he has any sort of moral high ground to stand from to make the statements he made. In this case, I think he has no cachet. He should just be quiet and just say what he needs to say on a technical level that is important for the job. But to say things like, oh, well, underperformance. Underperformance what? especially given the fact, not only, Karen, you pointed out some instances of underperformance, but the fact that we still have that whole situation about the lost file that was then found. That whole thing is over the head of the Office of the Attorney General. The buck technically still stops at him, as much as I'm willing to believe his version of events. But that is besides the point. I just brought that up to point out that the AG, he needs to tread carefully with regards to who he's going to condemn when he has a lot to answer for. But there's also the fact, Karen, that, well, you've pointed out what the Chief Justice said, you pointed out what the AG said. Also, the Prime Minister is one of the people who made mention of some things that might seem related, but when you really get down to it, they're tangentially related, they're by the way related, but they don't speak to the core of the issue, and it goes to what you're saying, and that, well, it's a nice distraction, but it's not really to the point.
Exactly, and when you introduce the topic, you said, you used the word political, and you're right, because as I had said already, I am going to look at it through a particular lens. And I don't think my lens is that unclear that I don't understand what is going on, because I've been inside there, and I do understand if one wants to get rid of a person. I'm seeing it through that. There's too many pieces coming together of the key players speaking out against a person, right? And very well knowing that 3/4 of his problems are not his. He's not causing it. The persons who are criticizing him are the ones who are really the ones who are preventing him from performing, or his office or department performing at optimal level, and not having this backup of people in remand, probably serving a longer time in remand than the actual sentence that they would have gotten. But I told you that I had mentioned to you, so I think I want to come off that point, which I'm very strong on, that I think it is a deliberate, concerted effort. It's too coincidental not to be. But the other thing is that what the Prime Minister does, and that's what he always does, is try to deflect. And how he does it is go off on a tangent or something. And one of the newspapers, in opinion, pull him up on it. He said, they're talking about under-resourced thing. Why you don't answer that question? Answer why, since 2017, 2018, 2016, 2020, since you're in power now, why it is that you haven't given him the resources? Why you're not answering that question? That's the question. But you're not answering that. You're talking about somebody else and insulting them, knowing that would make the news, and that would then take people off the point, which is what he does very well, deflect. The other thing he has done, talking about the fact that this man would move from the building he's in, and they've given him a new building, the keys to the building, and you imagine he doesn't want to move because he says he wants bulletproofing. I think they said they gave him the bulletproofing, but now he wants a wall. Now, for the last 3 years, you've been paying rent to whom? Because somebody's being paid that rent for a building that's unoccupied, and you are the head of the National Security Council, you are the Prime Minister, etc., and you allow a situation to remain like that, which is a waste of taxpayers' money for an unoccupied building. But the issue I really wanted to say is that to me, the impression that is being given to put the nail in the coffin on the DPP, it can't be just one attack. It has to be a series of attacks, all with intention to turn public opinion against him. So the other attack is deflect, do answer, and then everybody come up with the chorus line. But the one they come with now is, imagine we give it and take $45 million wasted down the line. So let's deal with that. I do not know personally, and I will not, but I am pretty certain there's never ever been has anyone ever said that Roger Gaspard is a dishonest man. In fact, I think he almost should be given a sainthood, because for him to stay in there, knowing they want him out badly so they can put whoever they want, and that's not the PNM, that's any government. Because having a DP that you cannot instruct, when he could take one of your cabinet ministers who might be guilty of money laundering or terrorist financing or some criminal activity, because it's not just, there's white collar crime too, bribery and so on. Having a DPP that you can absolutely not instruct not to, or go after this one, not go after this one, is not something governments really would like to be put in that position. So I say that to say that he has raised security concerns. And the Prime Minister is giving the impression, or we are being given the impression, that it's this bulletproofing thing that he has been given. I have a feeling it's much more than that. And I'm saying that on good grounds because I went and did my research again, as I try always to do, in 2013, when there was another government, 2013, under the former government, he had security concerns that he was being spied on the 5th floor in a conference room, that his discussions, high-level discussions regarding prosecutions or as they may, criminal prosecutions, etc., that they were being spied and listened to. And in fact, in May 2015, the Trinidad Express actually reported a special branch said he was talking the truth. He was not. When they wanted to dismiss it and say it was not true, it was in fact true. They confirmed that in January 2013 that infrared signals were being found in the conference room of the DPP's office in January 11, 2013. Now, these are officers of a special branch. They conducted an electronic sweep. Now, what I do know is that the government wanted to send their security person to do the sweep, and he said, no, I want my own. You could put whatever you want out of that. And he wanted his own security sweep. And they found the infrared, whatever they call it, the spy, what they call it, I'm not that good in the technology. You're just talking about technology, but there's a term. The signal, the IR, infrared signal was detected in the northeastern side of the building, in the conference room of the DPP, where he held all his meetings. And when he brought in his own people. So I am going to put it out there that given the concerted, in my view, effort of the DPP, the Attorney General, the Chief Justice, the Prime Minister, in all the different permutations, coming after one man, and then trying to say that he's wasting government money with the security. What I'm saying, I have a feeling he has great security concerns, and that is the reason he will not.
Karen, I have to ask you to stick up in there. We'll continue this after the news, but we have to break for news right now on WESN. When we return, we will continue the discussion and open up the phone line, so stay tuned, folks.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. 6 more succumb to COVID-19. Praisal residents protest lack of proper water supply. 2-year-old nursing wounds following dog attack. And internationally, Argentina inflation soars past 100% mark. Now for the details. 6 more persons have succumbed to COVID-19 in the last 7 days. This takes the death toll to 4,361. Meanwhile, 367 new cases of the virus were recorded. The rolling 7-day average for active cases is 52, and for deaths, the figure is 1. There are currently 66 patients hospitalized with COVID at this time. Praisal residents staged a protest on Tuesday calling on WASA to provide them with a proper water supply. The residents say they have not received supply in over 16 days.
WASA has advisory on their website saying that we're supposed to get in 9 days. That has been extended over time to any time after 9 days. On this occasion, we've been waiting for water. Today is 16 days that the entire area has been without water.
A 2-year-old boy is nursing injury wounds following a dog attack at the home of a relative on Tuesday. Reports say the incident occurred at the child's grandparents' home in South Arapuj around 8:30 a.m. Vishal Dionath was bitten on the neck and chest by the mixed breed dog and is warded at the San Fernando General Hospital. The child and his 3-year-old brother were playing in the yard while their grandfather swept when the pit bull mixed dog attacked them. On to international news now. Argentina's inflation rate has soared past 100% for the first time since the end of hyperinflation in the early 90s. Inflation hit 102.5% in February, the country's statistics agency said, meaning the price of many consumer goods has more than doubled since 2022. Argentina has been in economic difficulty for years, and most of the population now live in poverty. Well, that was your news of the hour on WESN. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for watching.
But if we died with Christ, we have faith that we will also live with him. We know that Christ has been raised from the dead, and he will never die again. Death no longer has power over him. He died to sin once and for all with his death, but he lives for God with his life. Join WESN as we explore the death and resurrection of Christ with He is Risen, a perspective from varying leaders within the Christian faith. He is Risen, starting March 27th, only on WESN, the content capital.
Welcome back to Talking Point, folks, here on WESN. Sean Michael Small, Karen Shashera. We've been talking about the DPP situation. Karen believes that this is just another attempt to get him out. This is not the first time, nor the first administration. To be fair, that is politics. That is how our politics are right now, folks. It is to say the leaders want to control everything. And to some extent, I think it is for the sake of control. It is for the sake of not having anyone who could be independent, I believe is the primary motivation there. Sometimes also it goes even further with regards to directing things that might be questionable, to say the least, but to go further, well, let me not mention further. All I'll say is this. My whole thing, and I'll repeat it again, we mentioned it before when I was talking about Rikita, and I'll say this just before we open the phone lines. Ask yourself this, where is the talk about solutions? Even with regards to the building and the rent, where is the talk about solutions? Because that has been allowed to fester for more than 1 year. How is it that what the people who are directing the blame to the DPP, how are they solving the problem? Or what have they put forward to solve the problem? Because if it's the case where they've been shortchanging on a lot of things because the government doesn't have the resources, as Karen pointed out, but the judiciary is fully staffed, the AG's office is fully staffed, but the DPP is not, the criminal prosecution arm of the government is not fully staffed. Where are the priorities? If we have limited resources, where are the priorities on how we spend those resources? Where are the solutions? So I will agree with Karen there, and I do not appreciate, this is not the first time within the last couple of months that I've seen the media run with certain aspects of a story, the bacchanal, and not really get down to the main point of, but where are the solutions and why is it? No one asking the question, why are we allowing these problems to fester? Folks, I will leave that there, open up the phone lines. Of course, you don't have to call about this. You could call about something else if you want to. Just please be concise with your point, because we might have people waiting on the line as you're speaking. Our first caller from Pitty Valley. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Sean. I have a question for Ms. Karen Yunus-Isha, if she could answer it.
Mm-hmm.
I know the DPP office in the Constitution is protected by law. My question is, and I want to make it abundantly clear, I'm not speaking about this DPP. I'm speaking in general. If a DPP is supposed to go, let me say, rogue, I know the DPP cannot, the Prime Minister is not his boss, the Attorney General is not his boss. Who does the DPP answer to in checks and balances to if a DPP is supposed to go rogue? I want to make it clear, I'm not speaking about this DPP. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think it is important that, first of all, the Judicial Legal Service Commission is responsible for the appointment, revocation, transfer, and disciplining of persons in those various departments of the Attorney General, because the DPP is a department, a division of the Attorney General Ministry of Legal Affairs. It is a department. So I would think it would be the Judicial Legal Service Commission, in the same way with the Chief Justice. Who is to discipline the Chief Justice? Maybe know it's the Prime Minister. Who is to discipline judges is Judicial Legal Service Commission. That's in the Constitution. So I suspect if the Judicial Legal Service Commission has authority, not over judges, but persons who in all those departments, it would be them. And I would want to say that it is the person there. And what I would say is what is true, what would be true is this, that if you have an office of the criminal proceedings solely to this person, the DPP, and regardless of who party is in power, you are not going to be too happy that you can't tell him, leave that alone now. Don't prosecute that now. And because, as I said, it doesn't have to be, it can be a money laundering, it could be another bribery, it could be corruption. And I don't think any government would like to be in a position, if you have an honest DPP and one that is not going rogue, and I don't know what you mean by rogue, but one who serves the country, I would understand why they would want someone like him.
Well, I think, and you see, it's a balancing act with regards to you want to keep him protected from political influence, but you can't have him so independent that he could do whatever he wants and then be a free-flawed all to himself. I'll just say this though, with regards to corruption in the country, when is the last time we've had a successful big money white-collar criminal prosecuted? We've just seen cases being dropped because they can't continue. I'll just leave it there. We have a caller from Faizabad. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Carl. Good morning, Sean. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. Carol, I want to throw your mind back a bit with Okasi Paul, Sat Sharma, and John Jeremy refusing to testify. Mr. Gaspard was refused his appointment on numerous occasions by previous PNM regime. Another point I want to make is that Dr. Rowley on his campaign trail the other night said that the UNC were the people responsible for the visa restrictions for Canada. So that was a blatant lie that was done under the NAR with, I think it was Dr. Basdev Sahadev. Then we had Paula Gopi-Schoon telling a lie again the other night with the trade mission from Jamaica, saying that we did $1.1 billion in trade. And 2 minutes after, the Jamaican people debunked that and said, look, we only did 14 million this year and 100 million last year.
Sorry.
You know, within 2 minutes, it was debunked. So,
you're talking Jamaican dollars.
Yeah, Dr. Rowley is a compulsive liar. He has proven to be that. And you know, they're taking the country down the wrong road. We are mixing up competence with negligence. Mr. Armour is not negligent in his doing. He's incompetent. So let me not misplace it, my dear. Have a nice day.
Thank you, caller.
I cannot go to get into that. I mean, you know, my mother said, my grandfather used to say 2 wrongs will make a right. So that's the end of that part.
Actually, Karen is arguing for neither negligence or incompetence. That's usually my role. But we have a caller from San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
Morning, Sean. Morning, Karen.
Morning.
You know, this, I am so proud of Roger Gaspard, and let me tell you why. If you look back at the DPP's office, the last 2 DPPs prior to Roger Gaspard were given judgeships, and so it seems as if the DPP's office is a pathway to being a judge, and they took it. Roger Gaspard has stayed there and tried to fix this office, you know. People do not appreciate what has been happening in that office with that man, you know. In my opinion, that man has been trying to fix something that he has seen wrong and has been vilified so many times for it. And this morning I'm just saying, stay the course, Roger. Thanks.
I just want to add, 100% I agree with you, but just to be fair in your statement, the prior to Roger Gaspar being appointed, it was she's a judge now. I also taught her. I don't have very good memories of her too, because she tried. Anyway, that's another debate. But at that time, the prime minister had the power of veto, and she was acting DPP, and he exercised his power of veto, and she was not appointed. And that is what caused her to go to the judiciary. What's her name? Her mother was always well known, an activist, died about a year ago. She hyphenates her name, but she was acting, and they had big marching, and her mother marched, and NAR people march and say, why the prime minister thing? But at that time, I'm just trying to say, to be fair, the reason why she went to the judiciary was the prime minister at the time had the power at the time to veto her appointment, and he vetoed it.
Well,
and that is why
Karen, you yourself pointed out the fact that he's, I believe off air, that the DPP, Roger Gaspar, he stayed in the office when he probably could have earned more money and have less stress doing something else. Not just being a judge, but also potentially in private practice. Although the way, not necessarily going to spell it out right now, but the way how the legal profession is going, there seems to be two sets of lawyers, those for and those against the government, that influences who hires you and who doesn't hire you. And I think that potentially works both ways, just saying.
But I just want to say that 100%, I support Roger Gaspar. He is a hero.
We have a caller from El Seguro this morning. Good morning, caller.
Yes, good morning. You know, this whole thing with the DDP and several other issues, what I've seen from all these things are people with political aspirations. Imagine a person who belonged to a party that was accused of spying, bugging the DDP office, is now coming to play holier than thou. You know, and next thing too, nobody in this country with question over the head, with insider trading and so on, I will listen to. Nobody. Because people have questions to answer in this country, and they come over as righteous people. And I have a problem with the bacchanal politics in this country. It's only bacchanal and confusion people making over the media, and I take no stance in saying what I say, right? Because really, when you really look at it, you have so many people who have all the answers, and nobody's coming up with a proper answer. It's only left, right, and center attacked by both sides of the fence. Both sides. Both sides. You see the bacchanal politics in the parliament. You see the badgerism. You see the aggressiveness. And then people want to talk about the children must do this and the children must do this. I think a lot of adults are setting a deceitful example for the children in this country. And that is the problem.
Can I just comment on this? Because I suspect that without saying it, that the caller, which we agree, I mean, I'm the one brought up the thing about the spying in 2013, which was under the UNC. So I certainly was not defending one over the other. But the insider trading, I have to respond to that, because it was, gosh, I can't remember her name, but she was the acting DPP. And as acting DPP, she gave the then opposition head, Kamala Prasad, while I was, without letting me know, I heard about it by the media calling me on my way back to work in Barbados, that I was being looked at, giving her that letter under Section 6 of some legislation. And she knew that if it were, they were talking about Clico Investment Bank, it's a family-owned bank. It doesn't even trade on the stock exchange, much less is it a state enterprise. So the accusation, number one, which they come up with this insider issue, she had no legal grounds to write that letter, which she had to have known. But in my view, since Mr. Prime Minister Manning vetoed her appointment as DPP, let's get at him. And getting at him was to write a letter to give it to Kamala Prasad when she knew that that legislation could not have applied to me, because it was a family-owned company and therefore it was not applicable. Yet she did it to do damage. So I don't know holier than thou. I said it now, and I lost all respect for her. And by the way, I did teach her too, so it didn't help me.
Well, I just want to say, the caller made another point with regards to the attitude of our leaders setting a bad example. And I think he's right in the sense of when most politicians, they basically tend to deflect. And I can't remember the last time I've seen a politician really take accountability for something or take responsibility for something. And I do wonder if that now is translated down through society into our school children, where you don't take responsibility, you don't take blame, you don't apologize, you deflect and you defend and you get defensive. And if they want to press the issue, you get aggressive in your defense. And now we see school violence. I'm just saying, you know, it might not be directly related, but it might be tangentially, you know, contributing.
And
we have a caller.
And Sean, and by the way, she's a judge now. I want to answer that question. How she wrote that letter.
We have a caller from
and she's a judge. That's for you have in the judiciary.
Good morning.
That's for you have in the judiciary.
Good morning, caller.
Good morning to you. I am just commenting here on something that was just said by one of your callers. To it, that a party that was accused of bugging the DPC's office is now commenting about whatever. Well, I want to put on record that somebody who falsely accused a certain prime minister of plotting murder is now the prime minister of this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller.
I don't know about that.
I mean, at the end of the day, yes, this is why you don't just throw out accusations out there if they're going to amount to nothing. Because now, I'm not entirely sure, like Karen, exactly what that accusation is. But we know of cases where politicians just throw words out there and no one holds them accountable even to that. So this is what we get as a result. How are we going to should we take people seriously when they have that track record? We have a caller from San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
I just wanted to say to Karen, the name you're looking for is Carla Brown Antoine.
Right, Carla Brown Antoine. Under Section 6 of the corruption thing. And she knew that it did not apply to me, and yet she gave it and she's on the judiciary. No, I'm sorry, Sean. They brought it up, and the gentleman brought it up, and he was implying that I should not be speaking because I'm guilty of insider trading. So since we're talking about
technically you're not guilty.
I had to defend myself.
Technically you're not guilty.
And I give her a chance, Carla Brown Antoine, to say what I'm saying is not true. If that letter was a pack of rubbish, and she had to have known that at the time.
I mean, you know, at the end of the day, the government could release the clicker reports, and then, you know, if there's any guilt there, we would know. I'll be the one to point that out.
That was a letter in the parliament saying that she, as acting DPP, that she was looking at charging me under the thing when she knew it could not apply because the Clico Investment Bank is family owned, it's not even on the stock exchange, and much less a state-owned company. So the legislation that she quoted could not apply to me as a minister, and she knew it.
Folks,
I am saying that openly that she knew it, and I would like her as a judge, as she is now, and a former student of mine, to say that what I'm saying is not true.
Well, we have a caller from Port of Spain. I don't know if it's the same caller. Good morning, caller. I think this is the last caller we have for the day. Last caller, keep the time. Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, I'm calling from Port of Spain just to clarify something that was just said.
Yes.
About the prime minister who accused a certain prime minister. If you recall the email gate, you'll be very, very cognizant of what I'm talking about. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, I agree with you on principle. And I actually was thinking of Emailgate because at the end of the day, Emailgate was thrown out there for better or worse. Did anything come of it? No. And I do have to question, what is the benefit of politicians accusing each other of things just to get clout? But if it's that serious, why are we not investigating anything? Why are we not accomplishing anything? And for those accusations that are baseless, why isn't there? Because I'm pretty sure there's supposed to be something against wasting police time and wasting state prosecutors' time and wasting a judge's time with superfluous, baseless accusations, not to mention the potential of libel. But there's parliamentary privilege in some cases, you know. So there's all that. So, caller, we agree with you on principle. It's just one thing, and politicians do it. It's something that I would like to see removed from our political landscape, because it's not, again, as somebody pointed out, a whole lot of things being thrown about, but actual working solutions, where are they? Now, in this case, The preliminary just starts with the DPP's office needs more staff. And the staffing situation long-term needs to be fixed with regards to why is it that shortages are allowed to accrue, and then they just come in and just drop, okay, take 10, take 20, train them all at once. Because as Karen pointed out, you can't just take these junior attorneys and have them be senior prosecutors in a matter of days. And when we
not only that, you have to train them now.
Right, and when we have a...
Who's going to train them?
The thing is, and maybe we've undersold it, but I have mentioned, we have a crime problem right now. And part of alleviating that crime problem is for, at the very least, we can't blame the police. Oh, you only solved 75 cases out of the 600 murders last year. Can we even prosecute those 75 properly? So what's the point of blaming the police that they can't detect more murders and solve more murder cases if we can't even prosecute them anyway? If we have an even worse bottleneck further down the road? Well, we're more or less out of time, Karen. I don't know if you want to have any last comment with regards to what we've spoken about. Or if you want to just mention anything to close.
The only thing I would say is that when I mentioned the issue of the 2013, it wasn't to go... all politicians are politicians. And I think whoever is the government, you would not want a DPP who you feel is not going to be... well, not necessarily in your back pocket. You don't want necessarily that, but you don't want one that you feel is so independent, which he's supposed to be. You know, so that is the, and the thing is that Roger Gaspard has proven himself to be. So regardless of who forms the government, he is going to be under pressure. He was under pressure with the UNC. I know that as a factor. It went beyond that. And the current government also will have their reasons because, as we said, there's white-collar crime. And I would love them to release I've written actually at the time, my lawyer twice, to ask the DPP to release the CLICO inquiry, commission of inquiry, and do something because at least with Carla Brown Antoine, what she said, it could be proven by the law that she should not have given a letter. But release the DCL Financial Commission inquiry report and prosecute because I don't want the same thing to happen with that. This happened with Piaku. And that's where it's heading.
The thing is, folks, some people might want to say, well, Karen, what is the basis of you saying what you're saying? You know, and yes, her experience is not physical evidence, but I will just say this to support her. It could be that Karen is not correct. It could be, you know, it just might happen to look a certain way and not be that way. However, this is a tale as old as time. This is a movie cliche for a reason that, some leader wants to get rid of somebody who he can't get rid of directly, so we'll undermine him in subtle ways, and then eventually he'll be forced to quit. This is a movie cliche, a storyline cliche for a reason. And I'll just remind people, one of my favorite topics to bring up because it is unfortunately that big of a deal. With regards to the Police Service Commission, it is very hard to reasonably say that the government did not interfere with something that by the Constitution they were not supposed to interfere with. However bad the interference was, it could be minor interference. The point is it should not have been interfered with at all. So with that as the recent history, if somebody wants to tell me that there is no effort to remove the DPP to get someone more malleable or complacent or agreeable in the office so as to avoid any, disagreements, the problem is we've already seen a situation that cannot reasonably be said, no, that's not true. We've seen a situation where it's reasonable to say, it probably is true here, interference into an independent service commission. So why not an independent prosecutor's office? Why not? And again, transparency works for you because it will erode all of these speculations away. But if you're not transparent, don't blame the people who could only work with what you give them. And I will leave it there, folks. This is Talking Point on WESN. I'd like to thank all of our callers for calling in, for all of their passion and opinions. Whether we agree with them or not, it's still valuable to the discussion. Karen Share, of course, thank you for dropping your insight and your experience on this topic. And of course, I can't wait to see what's going to happen next week now, the way how this year has been going. It's only the 3rd month. To Keaton Shah, of course, all of us wish you well. Folks, he is fine. He's safe. He's healthy, but we still wish him well. Hopefully he'll be here with me. Of course, I knew Karen is going to miss him. It's so unfortunate. But hopefully he'll be here with me.
We love you, Sean.
Calm down, stop it. Hopefully he'll be with me tomorrow morning. So I will say adieu. But in the words of my co-host today, it's a good day to have a good day. But we need to make it so. We can't just wait for someone to do that work for us. Folks, we'll see you tomorrow morning on Talking Point on WESN. Goodbye.